The Untouchables is a killer thriller, but it really messes up the lore for Kevin Costner's Eliot Ness. True crime media has sensationalized the lives and misdeeds of a great number of terrible people, from organized crime bosses to outright serial killers. But one of the most famous figures to rise in stature thanks to Hollywood's obsession with crime fought on the other side of the law. Eliot Ness was a lawman and eventual head of Chicago's Prohibition Bureau, at the same time and place as famed criminal Al Capone's reign over the city's criminal enterprises. Since his passing in 1957, Ness has become codified as a neo-Western icon of law enforcement, morality, and heroism, largely thanks to the posthumous release of his memoir, as well as a television series and, eventually, a film by Brian De Palma, which took the name of this book, The Untouchables. The 1987 film saw Ness being portrayed by Kevin Costner, a movie star whose persona fit perfectly with the image that had been crafted of this legendary crime fighter. But how accurate are these fictionalized portrayals of Ness, and especially his role in bringing down Al Capone? How accurate is Kevin Costner's portrayal in Brian De Palma's The Untouchables? Al Capone plays a major role in De Palma's film adaptation of The Untouchables. Capone is portrayed by Robert De Niro, who De Palma had previously cast in some of his earliest roles. De Niro's Capone rarely interacts with Costner's Ness face-to-face, but the two are constantly engaged in a cat-and-mouse hunt as Ness and his crew of untouchable lawmen close in on Chicago's underground. The name Untouchables comes from the reputations of these men as incorruptible and morally upstanding, unlike many ethically compromised officers who would accept bribes. Much like in real life, Capone was unable to be pinned down for any of his violent criminal activity. Bringing charges for Capone's various, more serious crimes proved difficult, thanks to a higher burden of proof and far less evidence. The Untouchables decide to go after him for tax fraud, after discovering he had not paid income taxes in years. Ness is able to put together a case that ends in a showy trial and a conviction. Capone is sentenced to over a decade in prison. All of this happened in real life, except Ness was not a part of it. It is true that Ness investigated Capone during his time in Chicago. Ness was the head of the squad that racked up piles and piles of evidence of Capone's more heinous crimes, and especially his bootlegging empire. However, the case that brought Capone down was built by attorneys and IRS agents. Ness and Capone knew of each other and may have even met, but Ness' role in putting him behind bars has been vastly overstated in this film. Tax law is probably not as exciting as watching Costner shoot bad guys, unless your accountant is played by Ben Affleck. Brian De Palma's take on Eliot Ness turned Kevin Costner's character into a legend. The Untouchables gives Ness an arc that sees him rise to legendary status within the local law enforcement community. In reality, since Ness was largely removed from the actual work that put Capone away, he did not leave behind such a legacy in Chicago. After Prohibition ended, Ness was shuffled from state to state until landing in Cleveland, Ohio, where he would spend most of his remaining career. In Cleveland, Ness had a tertiary role in the investigations into the still unsolved Torso murders and unsuccessfully ran for mayor in 1947. Throughout Ness's last 10 years, he did not maintain steady work in government or law enforcement. He passed away in 1957 with little recognition and no fortune. But just a few months later, The Untouchables, co-written with sports writer Oscar Fraley, was published. By 1959, the book had already inspired a successful television series of the same name. De Palma's film only catapulted the legend of Eliot Ness further into the public consciousness thanks to the all-star cast. Sean Connery won an Oscar for his role, stellar compositions by Ennio Morricone, and De Palma's masterful filmmaking. The train station shootout, which is an explicit homage to the Odessa step sequence in Battleship Potemkin, is one of De Palma's greatest set pieces, and it frames Costner's Ness as a triumphant hero. Today, countless series and films continue to revere Ness with outright portrayals or homages that depict him as a mythic figure of American law enforcement. An episode of Supernatural sees Dean Winchester travel through time and solve a case with Ness. Jimmy Woo, the fan-favorite FBI agent featured in a variety of Marvel Cinematic Universe stories, mentions Ness as a hero of his. The Untouchables was remade into another series a few years after De Palma's film, although with much less success. Ness has also been featured in comic books and video games, name-dropped in hip-hop songs, and was the subject of plays. Maybe Ness wasn't the hero that the movies have made him out to be. The Canadian border shootout in De Palma's film never happened, nor did the train station shootout. Ness did not kill Capone's bodyguard during his trial. In actuality, Frank Nitti died by suicide many years later. But Hollywood has always been about myth-making, and The Untouchables makes for a damn good story.